Today on the Big 3 in 30, the Falcons give big money to Drake London.
On a 4-year contract extension worth $141 million.
The Seahawks extend Derick Hall.
We have a big news story.
And A.J. Brown has his first practice with Drake May.
Drake May should be downright ecstatic.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL, the three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Falcons locked in Drake London with a massive new extension, keeping their top receiver in Atlanta long term. Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons breaks down the news.
Yes, Drake London just got paid on a 4-year contract extension worth $141 million as a base value, $100 million guaranteed. The contract is worth up to $150 million based off of the early reports with incentives and whatnot. And this now makes Drake London the third highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, passing Justin Jefferson, who got $140 million, so $1 million more to get him passed. And we were kind of expecting Drake to sign in this sort of $33 to $35 million a year range. You know, later in today's episode, we'll talk about, is he worth the price tag that the Falcons have paid? But, we expected the Falcons to try to get this deal done before the season started. We figured it would be their priority in terms of the two big contract extensions that are potentially looming on the horizon. The second one being Bijan Robinson. And now that Drake London has secured the bag, the Falcons can now turn their full attention to Bijan. Maybe Kyle Pitts. We'll see. Again, we'll see if they surprise us on that end. But, when they do turn their attention to Bijan Robinson, our expectation is that he will be the NFL's highest paid running back, not just in the current NFL, but potentially of all time. And we'll see if and when they get that deal done. We were optimistic, like I said, that the Falcons would get a deal done with Drake before the season, but we weren't necessarily certain of that, right? I thought we would probably get a deal done in the dead time in the middle of July before training camp would happen, rather than at this stage in early June. We sort of weren't 100% certain about that, just because Ian Cunningham, the Falcons general manager, coming from Chicago, where he was with Ryan Poles. And when Ryan Poles took over that team as the general manager and Ian Cunningham, obviously there as the assistant GM in 2022, they basically did not extend anybody. They did not give out big money to anybody. Famously, Roquan Smith was the player that wanted to get paid next. They wound up trading him to the Baltimore Ravens, who paid him. And then the Bears wound up, paying a lot of money to Tremaine Edmonds the following year. And so I'm imagining Ian Cunningham kind of learned his lesson, like, pay the guys that are worth the money. But we saw the Falcons throughout this offseason kind of be a little frugal when it came to making big time commitments, spending, little money here. We've talked all about that throughout the offseason. Made sense given their limited cap space and given the looming extensions for Drake London on the horizon. So happy to see this deal get done. Totally makes sense that the Falcons paid him this much money and made him one of the three highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. I think Drake at his best is one of the 5 best wide receivers in the NFL. We've seen that pretty consistently over these last 2 years, especially. Say what you will about former Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson as a play caller, but he definitely, one thing that you can't knock him for is that he figured out a way to elevate Drake London among others in this offense the last 2 years, playing like that borderline top 5 wide receiver, 800 plus yard games over the last 2 years combined. That total is tied for the 7th most in the NFL in that span. But when you factor in that Drake missed significant time with injuries, only playing 29 games, when you just look at the percentage of his games played that he results in a 100 plus yard game, that would be the 6th highest in the NFL over the last 2 years. He ranks 9th in the NFL in yards per game, but that number is slightly deflated because he spent last year injured and kind of limped through those last 3 games, especially last season. season and had the Falcons just kind of shut him down for the season, that yards per game metric would be the 4th highest in the NFL, only behind Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, and Jackson Smith-Njigba over the last 2 seasons. And one of the big things that I thought I really liked for Drake, that to me was kind of the one minor obstacle in my eyes to justifying paying Drake a big contract like the Falcons just did, was whether or not he would showcase more of the explosive potential in the passing game. And that was one thing that Drake hadn't been necessarily doing his first couple of years in the NFL, being occasionally explosive, but being more of that possession type wide receiver. But we saw, especially during the middle stretch of this past season in 2025, that 6-game stretch when he was at his healthiest last season from week 4 to week 11, obviously missing that week 8 game against the Miami Dolphins. And you just look at that 6-game stretch for Drake London between that period of time. Over that period of time, he was second only to Jackson Smith-Njigba for the most 20-plus yard plays in the NFL for wide receivers. During that stretch of the season, realistically, Drake was kind of carrying the offense and the passing game, or not the offense, the passing game, I should clarify. To me, whether you agree with this or not, but to me, that's kind of the reason why he kind of wore down last season, is just because he had to kind of carry the entire passing game on his shoulders. And it led to him, taking a little bit more wear and tear. But, the big question is going to be, he might have to do that again this upcoming season, although I think the Falcons are very optimistic that they've added, new, different, better elements around him at that wide receiver position. But we will see a changing role for Drake London in this Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees-led offense in 2026.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Summer is supposed to be the season everyone looks forward to. Vacations, longer days, more time outside, more plans with family and friends. But for a lot of people, summer can also feel surprisingly overwhelming. Schedules get packed, routines change, and sometimes it feels like you're trying to do everything at once instead of enjoying the season. That's why it's important to make time for yourself too, and therapy can help you create a version of summer that feels manageable and enjoyable. Summer can fill up fast before you even realize it. It's easy to say yes to everything and forget to slow down for yourself. And having time to reset mentally can make a huge difference in how you experience the season. With over 30,000 therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched with a licensed therapist based on your needs and preferences. And if the match doesn't feel right, you can switch anytime. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Big Three. Welcome back to the Big 3 in 30 NFL. The Seahawks extended Derick Hall, keeping another key pass rusher in place for their defense. Corbin Smith and Rob Rang with Locked On Seahawks walk through the deal.
We have a big news story involving an edge and the Seattle Seahawks. And no, they did not make a trade today, but we'll be diving into Derick Hall's new contract, why the Seahawks decided to pay him instead of Boye Mafe. We're going to look back at some of those big moves made within the division and the NFL yesterday and discuss, of course, whether or not John Schneider's got another move up his sleeves to counter in the NFC West talent wars. All coming your way. Without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. No, the Seahawks did not get Myles Garrett yesterday, and certainly re-signing one of their own players is not going to be considered as big of a move, but a big move at the edge position nonetheless, a position that had a ton of uncertainty going into next year. Derick Hall now under contract through 2029, a 3-year, $42 million contract extension worth up to $46.5 million. And Rob, normally when we do these segments, I try to look at both sides of the coin. What are the positives? What are the negatives? I have a very hard time finding a negative on this one because I thought for sure if the Seahawks were going to re-sign Derick Hall, before his final year of his rookie contract, they were going to have to at least match Boye Mafe's 3-year, $60 million contract that he signed with the Bengals in March to get him at $14 million per year, and what really amounts to a 4-year, $44 million extension with that last year in his rookie deal, $11 million per year over those 4 years. I don't think it's hyperbole to say if he produces the way he has the last couple of years, that is already one of the biggest bargains you're going to find for a veteran edge in the NFL. And I think there's still so much for him to achieve in terms of reaching his ceiling still at 25 years of age. I quite frankly was blown away by the numbers today.
Yeah, it does feel like one heck of a bargain for the Seahawks. And look, Derick Hall had the one splashy season in which he, I believe, had eight, 9 sacks. And I argued after that season a couple of years ago that I, in watching the tape, didn't think that he looked like a double-digit sack guy, even with that production in his second year in the NFL. He doesn't have elite twitch. He doesn't have the elite agility to be, a traditional sack artist. At the same time, he plays the run with such great physicality. He is a good complementary rusher. This is a good bargain deal for the Seahawks. I think that the reason why Boye Mafe got the big deal that he got from Cincinnati Bengals is, for one, Cincinnati overspent. And number two, Boye Mafe is a more dynamic athlete. But at the same time, in terms of what Mike Macdonald is looking for, run defense first, pass rush second, and physicality always. I think that Derick Hall is the picture-perfect Seahawk, and I think that he feels very comfortable here. He has been embraced by the organization, and I think maybe that is one of the reasons why that he agreed to a deal that is going to be overtaken by several other pass rushers throughout the NFL. And we saw Nate Herbig of the Pittsburgh Steelers already get a bigger deal, and his production isn't that much greater than Derick Hall's. But at the same time, I do think that this is going to ultimately be a win-win for Derick Hall and for the Seattle Seahawks, because I think that Hall, it could be here for the long term, not just these next 4 years, but even past that. And if he does wind up out producing these numbers, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is the type of deal that he and his representation, might be looking to upgrade as they move forward with another renegotiation.
Well, I think that's one of the big benefits to this. He's, again, only 25 years old. He could be negotiating for another massive deal at 28 with the way that the Seahawks do things. If the Seahawks want to keep him at that point, if he reaches his full potential, look, we saw it in the Super Bowl. We have seen flashes where he can take over games. And we talked about this a lot during the course of last season. And look, I don't know that you and I agreed on this completely from week to week, but I thought Boye Mafe disappeared for very large stretches last year, where he just has 53 men on the field. I never felt that with Derick Hall. Even when he wasn't getting the stats, you felt him on the field. And Mike Macdonald used that same terminology in multiple press conferences after games. Like, look, he might not be getting sacks, but we feel him. You feel his presence. I didn't feel that with Boye Mafe near as much last year. And the stats bear it out. Yeah, they both had 2 sacks, but Derick Hall had 11 QB hits. Boye Mafe had 2. Derick Hall had over a 16% pass rush win rate. Boye Mafe was around 11.5%. There was just some very wide gaps in terms of their overall productivity. And Derick Hall was a significantly better run defender. He was a PFF top 20 ranked run defender last year. So all-around player. He's a couple years younger than Boye Mafe. And I just think his mentality and the way he plays the game, it's more Mike Macdonald's speed. If Pete Carroll was still head coach, Boye Mafe might have been the guy. But I think that he is a picturesque version of a Mike Macdonald player, particularly that edge position. And I'm curious for your thoughts on this too, Rob. I think that this is another example of John Schneider. He is finding ways to be able to keep his middle-class players, as many of them as he can. And that's kind of been something that a lot of teams have moved away from. It's we pay our superstars, as many of them as we can, and then we have a bunch of guys on rookie contracts, not very many of the middle ground players. Having a quarterback that isn't making $50 million per year allows you to do that. But also, look, Derick Hall taking this deal, it is going to be easier for Seattle to turn around and get deals done for Devin Witherspoon and Leonard Williams and some of the other pending free agents coming up, because he could have asked for 20 plus million per year and he took 14. That is not a small chunk of change that you have in terms of financial flexibility. That is what culture and winning does. You'll stay for less. Not everybody's programmed to be that way, but Derick Hall, clearly he wants to keep having chances to win Super Bowls, and he'll take $14 million in order to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I like the way that you phrase that with like kind of the middle class player. I think that's how you build a culture. It's not about the individual players. It's about how the team is able to generate pass rushes in this case, for example. I just think that that is one of the things that Derick Hall has proven that he can be very effective. I mean, if you just look at the sack numbers, I mean, those 8 sacks a couple of years ago dropped down to 2 this past season. He had 0 sacks in his rookie season. He's played in virtually every game. So 10 sacks in 3 NFL seasons is not that productive. So I'm sure there is going to be some out there who might even think that the Seattle overpaid for Derick Hall. But I'm with you, Corb. I really think that this is kind of the blue-collar, lunch pail type of a player who is part of the rotation. You can feel, again, that physicality, the violence, the effort with which he plays. Again, I don't know that Derick Hall is ever going to be a double-digit sack guy in the NFL. But I do feel very confident that he is going to be a quality part of Seattle's rotation for the long haul. And by what I mean by that is, of course, at least these next 4 years. And again, I think that he is a prime candidate to be one of those players who it's very rare nowadays, but that plays his entire career with one NFL city. I think the Seahawks feel very fortunate that one NFL city might be Seattle.
Support for today's episode comes from Square, the system that helps fix one of the biggest headaches in running a business. Starting a business is exciting, but actually running it, that's where things can get complicated fast. Payments, inventory, staff, scheduling, online orders, it's a lot to manage. That's why Square brings everything together into one connected system. Square helps you take payments, track sales, manage inventory, and keep your business running smoothly without juggling a bunch of disconnected tools. One thing I've noticed at some of my favorite local spots is how seamless everything feels when they use Square. Checkout is quick, receipts are easy, and the whole experience just feels more organized. There's a local coffee shop I love that uses Square, and it makes everything simple, from fast payments to loyalty rewards. As a customer, it's convenient, and from the business side, you can tell it helps owners stay focused on serving people instead of constantly troubleshooting systems. If you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's SQARE.com/GO/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. Drake May and A.J. Brown got their first practice reps in together, giving New England an early look at its new top passing game pairing. Nick Cattles with Locked On Patriots takes you through it.
Drake May should be downright ecstatic. The number one priority for this organization the last 2 off seasons has been pretty simple to me. It is support your franchise quarterback. Support Drake May. And A.J. Brown, when you look at supporting your quarterback, is a big-time get. Drake May will be a better quarterback in the short and long term because of A.J. Brown's addition. Let's start here. A.J. Brown, legitimate boundary alpha who can make plays, something the Patriots did not find consistently. Yes, Kayshon Boutte could make some plays. Stephon Diggs made a couple of plays, but we are talking about play in, play out, week in, week out. A dangerous boundary receiver that defenses have to prepare for. We're talking about a wide receiver that is not just good when it comes to contested catches. We're talking about a wide receiver that is elite when it comes to contested catches. You know how many drops A.J. Brown had last year in the regular season? That would be one. One single solitary drop the entire year. He's a big target, literally. 6'1", 226 pounds, 78-inch wingspan, which is above average if you're wondering for a wide receiver. And we all know Drake May loves big targets. Mac Hollins last year, Hunter Henry, since he's been starting for the Patriots, right? Drake May loves big receivers. That's why you have somewhat of a problem with Pop Douglas and Drake May consistently finding Pop, even though Pop gets open a decent amount, because Pop Douglas is not a big target. Drake May loves big targets. And at 6'1", 226, that's exactly what A.J. Brown is. Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, he mentioned over the past 24 hours that Drake May, when you look at it, the type of routes that he was very productive throwing last year, the go route, post route, slant routes, those are perfect fits for A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown historically kills the middle of the football field. This is from November 13th, 2025, Liberty Line. A.J. Brown is one of the most dominant in-breaking route runners on the planet. He is a slant monster, a dig machine. And Drake May, I've talked about this from day one with Drake. May loves throwing the football in the middle of the field. He loves throwing to the intermediate areas. That is precisely where A.J. Brown can eat. Yeah, he's a boundary guy. He can make plays downfield, which we'll get to. But he also absolutely dominates the middle of the football field with in-breaking routes. Josh McDaniels calls a ton of those. Drake May loves throwing the football to the middle of the field. You know what else is great about A.J. Brown, his fit with this offense, and why Drake May right now is the happiest quarterback in football? If you go back to 2025, and you could go back to 2024, you could go back for several years. One of the biggest issues with this Patriots offense is their lack of the ability to beat man coverage. Their wide receivers have not been consistently able to beat man coverage. Again, Brown not only historically kills the middle of the football field, Brown historically is great against man coverage. NFL researcher posted on Twitter regarding Drake May, A.J. Brown versus man coverage. May in 2025, this is per Next Gen Stats, against man coverage, Drake May threw for 1,149 passing yards. That was fourth best in the NFL. Against man coverage, Drake May threw the third most touchdown passes in the league last year with 18. Meanwhile, A.J. Brown against man coverage since 2022 has the most catches in the entire league, 129. A.J. Brown against man coverage since 2022 has the most receiving yards in the NFL, 1,977. He has the fourth most touchdowns against man coverage since 2022 with 22 receiving touchdowns. Chad Graff from The Athletic, he wrote about A.J. Brown and what he does against man coverage. Last year, A.J. Brown ranked 8th in the league in yards per route run against man coverage. That's from Pro Football Focus. Among receivers with more than 15 targets against man. The season before that, in 2024, A.J. Brown was second in yards per route run against man coverage. In 2023, he was seventh. So consistently in the top 10 when it comes to yards per route run against man coverage. Evan Lazar to follow that up. A.J. Brown versus man coverage. According to Pro Football Focus, Brown's 338 receiving yards against man last season ranked 10th in the league. So this offense that has had all sorts of trouble against man coverage, they just landed one of the best wide receivers in the NFL against man. Let's dive deeper into the 2025 offense against man coverage. Chad Graff, again, from The Athletic. He wrote, last season, opposing defenses determined that man-to-man coverage was the best way to slow the Patriots' offense. New England faced man coverage at the 9th highest rate in the league last season per True Media. What's worse, teams pivoted to man coverage after scouting the Patriots. Through the first 8 weeks of the season, the Patriots faced man coverage at the 17th highest rate. Again, first 8 weeks of the season, Patriots faced man coverage at the 17th highest rate. After teams had studied the offense through 8 weeks, the Patriots faced man coverage at the 3rd highest rate. Defenses watched the film and said, this team doesn't have the receivers to beat man coverage. They just don't. We're going to play more man against them. If you beat man coverage, you start to dictate coverage. If you beat man coverage, you start to see more two high shells, the two safeties, right? Way back, GTFB. And when you have those two safeties, when you force the two high safety look, that opens up the underneath. It opens up the underneath for somebody like Romeo Doubs who can go to work. It opens up the underneath so you can run the football against two high safeties. This is why it's critical to have an element like A.J. Brown in your offense. How about play action? That's another aspect of this offense where Drake May, A.J. Brown, great fit. Evan Lazar on A.J. Brown and play action. In 2025, Brown only had 11 catches for 134 receiving yards off play action. Philly only ran play action on 14% of their dropbacks. But when you go back to A.J. Brown's final season with Tennessee, Brown ranked 9th in the NFL with over 400 receiving yards off play action on 22 catches. Lord Reeves on Twitter, Rich Rebar from Sharp Analysis, he posted, A.J. Brown had 19 total targets with under center quarterback play over the past 4 years. For his career, Brown has posted 4.35 yards per route run with his quarterback under center. It's an unbelievable number. Drake May was 10th in under center rate on pass plays in 2025. The Patriots love to have Drake May under center. They love calling play action when they feel like they can. And now you have a receiver who has done very well in the play action pass game and has done very well with his quarterback under center. You want to talk about fit? That's fit. How about red zone? A.J. Brown in the red zone, 11 touchdowns in 2020 and 2022. He has had 7 touchdowns 3 consecutive years. When you look at it, Chad Graff noted last season, New England's offense struggled inside the 20. They were 24th in scoring percentage in the red zone, 17th in touchdown percentage. The Eagles ranked 1st in touchdown percentage with A.J. Brown as part of that offense. Brown has had 10 touchdowns in his last 18 games. You need help in the red zone, A.J. Brown can help you in the red zone. These are tangible football, facts, stats, analysis. A.J. Brown is a big target, perfect for Drake May. A.J. Brown is a legitimate boundary alpha who can make plays, elite contested catch guy, perfect for Drake May. He historically kills the middle of the football field, perfect for Drake May. Historically great against man coverage, much needed for this offense and this quarterback. He is really good in play action, really good with his quarterback under center. Drake May does good with play action and does well. And you saw the play rate go up last year under center with Drake May. This is why I think this is a perfect union, a perfect football union, a marriage of the styles, a marriage of the strengths, not to mention A.J. Brown's swagger, confidence, leadership, and what that brings to the offense. In and out of the huddle. You need somebody to make a big catch on third down. You need somebody to make a big catch in the red zone. Even if he's blanketed by man coverage, A.J. Brown is your guy. The happiest quarterback in football right now is Drake May. On paper, May and Brown, perfect fit.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every week just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 College wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NFL.